Thank you. Brendan remembers looking up. Okay. Let me just go back. Okay. Thank you. Brendan remembers looking up at 9 o'clock and seeing the second plane fly into the south tower of the World Trade Center. A thin layer of soot started to fall on him and everyone around him. At that point, Brendan started moving with some other people towards the George Washington Bridge. He said we were all in it together. We didn't know exactly what was going on, but he said if anybody had a cell signal, they gave it to someone next to them so they could call someone they loved and let them know that they were okay. 7 years later, when Brendan was among 1,000 people in his firm to be let go, that feeling, he said, of connectedness, of being in it together, completely vanished. He said, I figured I'd get a job easily enough. He said, but all my connections, all my experience, none of it seemed to matter. So he found himself driving for a limousine service, feeling like he was going absolutely nowhere. He said, I felt lost. I felt invisible. He said, I alternated between feeling angry, sad, and numb. Having just turned 60, Brendan is a baby boomer, part of a generation that began in earnest when soldiers returned from World War II. They grew up in a time of unbridled optimism, where everything seemed possible. Their songwriters told them that they would stay forever young. Today, 8,000 baby boomers turned 60, and they will continue doing that every day for the next 10 years. They are keenly aware that this places them in a very precarious position as companies continue to downsize and merge. They know that they are likely targets to be laid off because they are often paid more than other people in the company. For baby boomers such as Brendan, who lose their jobs, it can feel like they're losing part of themselves. Certainly they lose part of their security, their sense of purpose, in many ways their identity. How can they find their inner compass? How can they see themselves not as someone who was affected by this, but someone who overcame this, someone who looked at what was going on and found a way inside of themselves to achieve what they needed? Part of it starts by looking at their strengths. Their strengths can help them, particularly when you're feeling weak and vulnerable, because their strengths can help them identify who they are rather than just think about themselves as what they've just gone through. From there, positive interventions can help them to see more clearly who they are and what they're about, tapping into their resilience and strength. From there, their hearts is a sound that they will start to hear. At first distant, then closer. That's when they will get a glimpse, perhaps, of something they wanted to do a long time ago that they gave up on for whatever reason. And now they feel ready to pursue with a new passion. This is how it happened for Brendan. One day he was driving, and a passenger in the back seat started talking to him about a program where he could become a teacher if he made a commitment to teach in the city where teachers were desperately needed. That message at that time was exactly what Brendan needed to hear. He couldn't help but remember that back when he went to college initially, he wanted to be a teacher, but chose to become an economics major instead because his father had warned him that if he became a teacher, he wouldn't make that much money. Now, having just got his teaching certificate, Brendan said, I feel as if I found myself. By connecting who he was and something he let go of that was laying dormant inside of him, connecting that with his strengths, with his optimism, with his resilience, Brendan has found himself and connected with others in ways that he could never have possibly imagined. He's created a future having to do with connecting. He said, I feel as if I've just come out of a long, dark tunnel. And I'm come on the other side, and I'm feeling that I finally know why I'm here. For Brendan, connecting the best of who he is with the possibility of who he can become, he is creating new possibilities for himself and for others, inspiring all of us. Thank you, Brendan.
What a storyteller. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Elena. Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Could I? Yes. I'm Patrick Sweeney. I just graduated from MAPP. My capstone, which I did with Dan Tomasulo, was focusing on baby boomers, how they can find themselves after losing their jobs. Understanding that in giving up something, they may find something, and I looked at a number of different baby boomers, some of who just, it was a feeling of complete loss, and others who actually, after going through some necessary stages of loss, kind of like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about, came through on the other side using, tapping into their strengths, but also finding something that maybe they wanted to do before that they didn't think they quite could. Maybe they didn't do it because, for the reason that the father just said, or other reasons. So I'm a writer, and just finished one book that I handed over to McGraw-Hill yesterday at 4:30. And my hope is to take this capstone and to be able to do something with it to help other boomers, and I'd like to figure out exactly how to do that, how to make it so that it can help somebody when they're going through this, at a time when that positivity, that sense of understanding who they are, can feel so lost, and how to help them. So that's my next step, and that's why this weekend I'm looking very forward to meeting and connecting with anyone. If anyone has any ideas that they'd like to share with that, I'd love to hear them, maybe love to work with you on them. Yes?
Kevin. Comment that that at a point where a boomer might turn 60, that you have to reinvent what success looks like for yourself, for others. You have to start with a blank slate.
That's such a valuable and such an important comment. I agree completely, because we can get stuck in that. We might just have one definition of success. When I was 12, I knew I was going to be a professional baseball player. You know, I had to give that one up. But all along, our definitions of success, I agree with you completely, need to evolve. But particularly when one's identity is so strongly tied into that, and then a rug gets pulled out from under them for no reason that they, nothing that they had done themselves. How do they take that, incorporate it into what just happened, and then move on, creating the story for themselves that makes sense so that they don't get stuck on just defining themselves that way, but also, as you're saying, redefining success in such a way that it still is aspirational, but there's an enormous amount of freedom to that if somebody can let go of the idea that, oh wait, I'm not successful now. Somebody just told me I'm not successful.
We probably have time for one more question. I know that Reb had his hand up and Pete had his hand up, so maybe we'll try for two if they're short. Reb. the difference between involuntary job loss and retirement.
I think you're absolutely right, Reb. I don't. I actually, when I was a kid growing up, my parents used to. My next door neighbor, he retired, and then he just kept going to his job. And it took his wife a couple of months. I mean, and they kind of smiled, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" and whatnot. He didn't stick around for lunch, but oftentimes, if that's what we do, and that's what our identity is, and particularly if we've gotten, all the kudos and stuff we put on the wall and say that's who we are, and who are we when we don't have that? Figuring that out, I think that it can be just as I mean, it certainly is difficult when it comes unplanned for somebody who is let go because of downsizing or whatever. But it can be very difficult. I agree with you. And that transition, the kind of work that we could do in here could help someone a lot who is letting go and then finding real meaning and purpose beyond that.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Pete, we'll have to... Oh, comment. Quick comment from Pete. Just wanted to say how much I enjoy the experience of listening to you. Your strength to be able to move us needs to be part of your direction. Thank you, Patrick.